This is the Final Word Cricket Podcast. It's the 19th season. It's the 29th episode. It is the 24th of February. Adam Collins in London, for now at least. I'm off to Malta tomorrow. I'll tell you about that in a sec, Jeff. He is in Melbourne, as ever, doing his thing, at least for now. I say as ever, you'll be in Europe soon enough as well. We're here with Maurice Blackburn Lawyers as our principal partner on the 19th season of the program, which we are always grateful for. More about them in the middle of the program. And as I said, Jeff, I'm off to Malta tomorrow as my cricket season is starting in February. And for a northern season, that is quite early, but such is the determination of the ODB crew that I run around with, that we are getting off for a very early spring tour when it's not even spring. I've got 7 pairs of T20 Vision sunnies in my bag. I've got 11 pairs of Step 1 pants, X cups in the bag for the boys as well. You can never be too prepared for these things. Hello to you.
Hello to you. Yes, it'll be it's a slightly dusty approach from me today. Came back from Sydney earlier today, went up there for the Australian Sports Commission Awards where we were a finalist again, which was nice. 3 years running to make the shortlist is pretty good going for the one that we won last year. And Australian Sports Night of Nights, a lot of colleagues, a lot of other people in the industry, people who've been on the show before. Tom Decent was there, was nominated for something, and it was safe to say it was a good night. The boat was pushed out, so
good.
Today I might be a bit Jeb Bush today, and my voice might be about an octave lower than usual, but we'll see. I'm going to crack a stomping ground because this is I haven't been able to face this yet today, but I think this might be the hair of the dog one that helps things out. The old hazy pale big sky, and I dropped by the stomping ground at the airport too. There's one at Tullamarine. I got to drop by there on the way out, and nice to see friends of the show seeing us off at Tulla.
We've got lots to get through in the show itself. We're talking South Africa. We're talking a bit of World Cup, the 100 and the shadow ban of Pakistanis potentially. There is a fair bit around the Big Bash Shale knocking about, quite a bit about Imran Khan, which deserves discussion on the weekly show. PSL, ICC press release fun. Australia's women playing against India's women in a game that you were covering just then, Jeff. The mighty Sheffield Shield, the Dean Jones Cup. There's Maurice Blackburn comeback stories. It's a busy show, but maybe we should just quickly start with our giveaways. You mentioned Stomping Ground, which we give away on our weekend show, a case of that. And that's been an ongoing thing through the last couple of months. What's new is that we are now doing a Step 1 giveaway in every weekly show. So giveaways in all of our longer programming for the next 6 weeks. All you need to do, and if you've already done this, great. But if you're a new patron or if you're up to your pledge on Patreon, you go into the running to win. Not just, I've been showing off the box of the X Cup here, the cricket style pants, but you can win. It's the old 7 days in Rio, Jeff. You can get 7 pairs of Step 1 pants, the revolutionary technology, the juggernaut business. You can become part of the Step 1 crew, which I've been part of since 2017. They are the best pants I've ever worn. I'm going to be brand loyal for life. And giving away 7 a week's worth in each weekly show. What better time to support independent cricket journalism than right now and joining our Patreon, and hopefully you'll get a chance to win one of the giveaways in the next couple of months.
If you do the old backpacking, turn them inside out, could be 2 weeks worth with 7 pairs. There are ways to approach this creatively. So I've grabbed the column of everybody who's joined up or raised their pledge on Patreon over the last couple of months. I've done the randomisation, and at the top of the list is Chris Unwin. Are you thinking underwear?
Yes.
It's Unwin wear. Chris Unwin has been a long-time pledger of the show. Chris, get to kit yourself out in some shiny new understrides, thanks to my random spreadsheet and Step 1.
I was going to say maybe we should get people to photograph themselves like we have with the beer. Maybe not, but you're welcome.
Depends how confident they are.
You're welcome to photograph yourself wearing the Step 1. You can just get the 15% discount with us anyway. TFW 148. That's a Tony Gregg joke that you would know by now. TFW 148, 15% across the site. They just launched the Step 1 X Cup campaign formally in the UK 2 days ago. So they've been on sale in Australia for a while. They're now formally on sale in the UK as well. No better time to get yourself sorted out. The jock strap bike shorts built-in one if you're a cricketer, but in general play. If men's and women's, the bamboo's brilliant. It does exactly what they say it does, believe me. And you will be away chafing no more that's step one. And great to have Stomping Ground on the other side of that, doing our weekend giveaway. A case of it on every story time. And the story times have been pretty good of late, so I've enjoyed listening back to a couple of them. You've got Barat for company on that this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yes, strap yourselves in for a 7-hour episode. Well, we haven't worked out what the stories will be yet, so it's always possible. But yes, I'm glad to see that Chris will be kitted out in some new gear. And well, I think that's that. Let's get into what's business. What's top of business on the show? What went on? What was news this week, Adam?
Well, I think that maybe we should start with World Cup, a bit of World Cup wrap up, because we don't get a chance to talk World Cup, you and I, because we're I'm doing the daily shows. You're on the other side of the world, middle of the night for you, so it doesn't quite align until here. But yeah, there was a pretty strong through line last week around whether Australia's Sri Lankan misadventure would lead towards them being in real strife for Olympic qualification for the men. Now, just to back over what we've learnt so far, this has not been formally announced, I don't believe, but we certainly got a sense of it through the last ICC meeting, is that there'll be 4 automatic qualifiers plus the USA as hosts for the LA 2028 Olympics. So that'll be one out of each.
And they'll be
region.
Regional.
That's right. Then there'll be one global qualifier for everybody else. And consider that the USA plus 4 and plus an outstanding group of teams who won't automatically get there, all vying for one spot. That'll be a huge, huge thing when it takes place, presumably in early 2028. But the working assumption the whole time has been that Australia have been so far ahead of New Zealand that it'd be all good. Now, we're told that with the women, because their ranking system is less developed, that it'll be to do with what happens at the T20 World Cup in England this year. But the men have got the rankings points, and thus they can lean on that. So it's not going to relate to Australia finishing lower than New Zealand in this World Cup. There's been some extra work done on this. Dan Bredig had the first story. The subsequent story out of India went through and crunched the numbers. It is virtually impossible, for what it's worth, for New Zealand to overtake Australia on ranking points before the time they cut it off. So it'll probably be fine. But, it's a reminder of where I said this to Bharat the other day when we were making a show after the Oman-Australia T20 match, that whilst we collectively seem to shrug our shoulders a bit at this and, Australia have not made it through, it's embarrassing for them to have not got out of the group, but, life will go on. There are far more important things than the T20 World Cup. The fact that it feeds into the qualification for the Olympic Games, I was saying this to a friend the other day, there is virtually nothing that people care about more when they're on than the Olympics. And if there's a gold medal at stake, that will really mean something in ways that ordinary bilateral cricket or even World Cups, with perhaps the exception of the 50 over World Cup, don't carry as much gravitas. You put Australia up against anyone in a gold medal game, that'll be 12 million eyeballs, 12 million sets of eyeballs watching that, or something ridiculous. Trying to cheer Australia home to the podium. So that's that added complication this week that I don't think anyone was really expecting until they got knocked out in such unflattering circumstances.
And the other part of the equation will be, in a comp that only has 6 sides in it, and one of them's the USA, any Australian cricket supporter would be absolutely expecting an Australian team to win that. Like, getting a bronze medal with 5 realistic competitors is not going to do it. You can be glad about a bronze medal when it's Jeff Hugel in the pool. You can be glad about a bronze medal in Winter Olympic sports, where Australians historically haven't had that many competitive athletes. You can't have a bronze medal in a 5-team shootout in cricket. That's just not going to cut the mustard. So that Australian team's got to win that, or they will be shit canned. Like, they could, maybe if they have a real cracker of a game for the gold medal game and just lose it, that they might get away with the silver. But if they're not in that gold medal game, they will be, there'll be a much angrier response than there was about this T20 World Cup, put it that way.
I've been thinking, Jeff, about how that all might inform how we cover it. Like, over more than a decade in journalism, my brain's hardwiring is different to what it was when I was a kid. Like, I barrack for the best story and perhaps some of the players' stories individually, but I'm not like barracking for Australia, far from it. I know there are some who maintain that disposition. That's long since gone for me. Different story with the Olympics. I'm that guy who's, crying when there's an Australian on the top of the podium at the Olympics, in my 40s, and encouraging Winnie to do the same last week when watching the Winter Olympics. So, it would be harder to keep that in check because there's something magical about Olympic Games. And for all the cynicism about cricket being there, I reckon that it'll all change once actually seeing them play for medals. And that's the link between the World Cup and the Aussie team. There was another story that Dan Bredig was on top of last week around, like, just this sense that with the way this tournament has been compromised by the off-field stuff with Pakistan and obviously Bangladesh not playing in it, the hint that if this happened again, remembering that India are co-hosting events in 29 and 31, what would happen next? And Bretto reporting that there have been at least some conversations about whether Australia could step in and host a tournament if they viewed the logistics around India as just being just too much to overcome, i.e. if there were too many games needing to be held outside of India to make it work, be it in the UAE or Sri Lanka or whatever, that they might use Australia as a place for that. Now, it seems a long shot, but interesting that those conversations are being had somewhere as a direct response to what's happened over the last 12 months.
Yeah, it is curious to like so much of it's about pride and face and prestige, right? That if this is your tournament that you're the host of, and you can decide if you want to siphon off a few games and put them somewhere else, but it's almost like that has to be somewhere that isn't a prominent cricketing place. That's why the UAE is so attractive, because they're not really a cricket power in their own right. So they're not getting any of the reflected glory. And I suppose we're conditioned to there being this group effort approach, group assignment approach between India and Sri Lanka, where going all the way back to the 90s, you've had World Cups that were hosted in both countries, at least to some extent. And, in the 90s, it was Sri Lanka that was the problem with the Tamil Tigers and the bombings in Colombo and so on, and the Australian team pulling out of that game and so on. Sri Lanka was the place that was difficult to travel to. But I guess it's a small blessing that at least we've got a break in the schedule in terms of Indian hosted events for 3 years, because maybe it gives some time to try to sort some of this shit out. Maybe things can settle enough that those events might be able to go ahead, or at least they've got a couple of years runway to try to work out what the alternative is. And that's why Pakistan was so pissed off, because their Champions Trophy that they hosted was a loss of face. They felt they were being insulted by having to seed games being hosted elsewhere, and by the fact that the biggest team in the world refused to come. So maybe within 3 years we can try to get some sort of resolution, although that might be a vain hope.
Yeah, well, they'll need to find some short-term solution when it comes to what happens in the men's 50-over World Cup next year. I can't see any blow-ups around what's going to happen in England this year. It's enough distance from the subcontinent itself. But the men's 50-over
because it's in
World
Africa, like the hosting part won't be a problem, and which means surely they'll play each other, because you won't have the tensions around who's hosting and who's refusing to travel. That's such a big part of the underlying thing, is being insulted as the host. And that we've experienced it in a lot of South Asian cultures, that hosting and hospitality is such a key part. It's such a big part of social standing, and we've been the recipients of that hospitality in so many places. We've been treated so kindly and welcomed so fully in the places that we've travelled to, because there is a huge premium put on how you show up to treat a guest. And so I think that's why there is such an extra loading on a team refusing to travel, because they're insulting the host effectively.
For sure. Yeah, it's a really good point. The only other side of that would be that now that Pakistan have flexed on the wider issues that we saw in their statement the other week, whether they could use the World Cup next year to flex again, I just don't know. But I would imagine that there's a lot of effort, back channels, right? Yeah. It's not as though it's like, I suppose, Cold War style. It's not as though the Soviets and the Americans didn't talk to each other. They just did so at such a underground diplomatic level to try and, keep the world from blowing itself up. Now, we're not saying it's the same level here, but there will be people who have relationships. Who have, well, yes, you know what I mean. Who've got relationships.
Can't rule it out.
Speaking of South Africa, Australia's Test matches have been confirmed there for October. Now there'll be 3 one-days in South Africa beforehand. There'll be some white ball cricket in Zimbabwe, and then we get to the first Australian tests in South Africa since the sandpaper debacle. That'll be the reference point for everything, I'm sure. The longer gap is owing to the fact that they didn't go during COVID, which we discussed fully at the time. No need to back over that now. But there's going to be a tour game, so welcome back to tour game. That'll be between the 3rd and 4th
for 2 days.
October, so whatever that constitutes in Poch. And then 3 test matches. The shall I say, the good oil was that these were going to be Joburg, Centurion, Cape Town. And it turns out the dates that we were sort of being told will probably land have turned out to be accurate, starting on the 9th of October and finishing on the 31st of October. So 3 test matches crammed in quite quickly, but it'll be a bit of a repeat of what happened in 2018, Jeff. We go Durban, Port Elizabeth. I'm not going to try and do the new pronunciation yet. I'll work on that between now and October so I don't embarrass myself. And then Cape Town to finish, which, of course, is where the sandpaper all played out. Now, they don't go to Joburg at all, but the first 3 are the same as the first 3, or the only 3 this time, which is noteworthy. It'll be a huge, huge trip for the final word. I've got no doubt. It'll be a huge trip for this Australian team. It'll be a trip that carries so much attention. It'll be a series where all eyes will be on Steve Smith and others who are around on that tour infamously. I kind of can't wait. You know, I when this press release came out yesterday, Fidos Munda had the story first on Cricinfo, who's a co-host of ours on the dailies right now. I was fired up straight away. I'm like, how good is this going to be to return to South Africa?
Well, much better as well, because what we were anticipating was the 2 grounds near Johannesburg, which would mean sitting in Joburg for 2 weeks, where you get less of an opportunity to explore the country. You know, doing it, Durban, seaside town, fascinating cultural place, like the deep part of the history of South Asian Muslim migrants, particularly to South Africa, and their part in the South African cricket scene and the alternative leagues that were set up when those players were excluded from white leagues back in the day. I mean, there's a remarkable South African story there that we got to know some great characters, made some great friends with people who are involved in those sort of leagues. Last time we were there, then you go to Ebeja, if I can do it, which does take a bit of work to get your tongue around the isiXhosa sounds, but that is, I think it's important to try to do. But again, a place that you and I found so interesting when we got to go and visit there, also on the coast. It was such a huge port town. Parts of it were very run down. Parts of it were up and coming. It'd be interesting to see where it's gone to, and then what we did last time, driving the garden route along the coast to end up in Cape Town. Maybe we'll do it again. It might be. I would happily do it again. It was a great trip.
Yeah, you're probably going to battle to do it this time with the way the schedule works. So much so that I've already booked my flights, so I know I'm not. With Durban as well, with the Zulu culture, that's all concentrated on Durban too. And you're right, PE last time was an extraordinary week, really. I have such fond memories of it from start to finish. And it was controversial because that was where the whole Durban dressing room story became exposed, and all the video footage and so on. And it was a compelling test match. There was the shirt front with Rabada and Steve Smith, all that came from that, and some outstanding cricket along the way as well. That 100 from AB de Villiers is one of the best I've ever seen. So that will be great, and I'm sure there'll be a massive final word presence. Book your flights, guys. If you want to get out there, book your flights. Don't wait. Get out there and be part of what's going to be a thrilling test series between the 2 best test teams in the world. World Test Championship final last time, 1 and 2 on that table at the moment. They're probably ranked 1 and 2 right now, although I don't know what the ICC rankings has for South Africa, but near enough to 1 and 2 on that measure. And a South African team who are flying in the World Cup, having beaten India so heavily, Jeff, that India are a decent chance of getting punted out of the World Cup right now, even if they win their last 2 games. With the way net run rate's working and the Windies having towed up Zimbabwe, there is a scenario, a very likely scenario, unless the Indians absolutely annihilate West Indies and do the same to Zim, of course, that they might lose 1 game in the Super 8s and not make it through, which would be a debacle given how strong that team is. But that says a lot about how strong South Africa are at the moment. There'll
be a new format immediately.
Jeff, just sticking with, I guess, I'd call it politics, the politics of the game, the off-field stuff. There's been well-sourced reporting by the BBC last Thursday that the 400 teams that have ownership stakes from the IPL in varying sizes, MI London, which is the old Oval Invincibles, the Manchester Supergiants, much maligned, the Southern Brave, who've retained their name but essentially owned by India, and Sunrisers Leeds, the artists formerly known as the Superchargers up there at Headingley. That the reporting goes, in a nutshell, that they will not be considering Pakistani players in the 100 auction. So the first time there's been an auction, that'll be on the 11th and 12th of March. So we're building up to it. There are 60-odd Pakistani players in the pool, in the auction pool, and the sense that much as it's been in South Africa and, of course, the IPL most prominently, that Pakistanis won't be welcome at those 4 clubs. There's lots to dig into here, Jeff, but that's the headline. What did you make of this? And I'll wheel back in a moment.
Well, first up, no surprise. Like, this was obviously going to happen. We all knew this was going to happen. I think you and I had a conversation about it maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't think it was on the show. We were probably talking offline about the fact that this was all but inevitable. And, well, actually, we talked about it. We might have mentioned it on the show in the context of the growing influence across the world in T20 leagues. I think we were talking about it in the context of the possible Big Bash sale, that when you've got IPL teams who won't pick Pakistan players who can't play in the IPL, well, obviously they're also not going to pick them or allow them to be hired playing in other leagues around the world. And so that effectively you get a bigger and bigger stake taken in all global domestic T20 cricket that shuts out players from one country because there's political disagreement between the leaders of that country, which has nothing to do with the players. So A, it was always going to happen, and B, it should not be allowed to happen. It is ethically unsustainable, unsupportable, indefensible to take that move against the players who have nothing to do with the politics of the country. And it's a little different when you're talking about national teams playing national teams, because they are directly representing the country in that sense. But simply being from a country, holding a certain passport, and then being told that you're not allowed to, or you're not allowed to be hired in a private league for a team that's not a national team, that has no international representation. There is no ethical framework to defend that, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is that this was always very, very likely to be the case, and it will be likely to be the case in other leagues where IPL money buys it out, because we know the relationship between toxic nationalism and people running big business in India or out of India who have enough money to buy these things. They're going to go along with whatever the powers that be think they should be doing in terms of government and in terms of those sort of captains of industry, your Ambanis and Adanis and all the rest of it.
Yeah, it just deflects, isn't it? It's part of that same old boring hyper-nationalistic story that we're so conditioned to now, and highlights what a shambles the sport is at its core. I sort of felt sorry for the ECB on one level. Let me caveat this, on one level, because I'm like, they were trying to tell a story on the same day of the 45 million quid they were distributing across the game at a grassroots level, because of course they know they've got challenges to continue growing the game in England. Everybody knows that. They're on the front foot about this for years. But this influx of money, which is meant to be one of the major benefits and major justifications, really, of the 100 and the way the 100's been sold off at a premium, £1 billion and all the rest of it. But as that money was being, as the press releases were going out about that, the BBC story broke, and it completely compromised that story. And the same thing happened on Friday when there was more detail on the day when they were talking about extending their agreement with various charities who are linked to the game. More money from the ECB, Lord's Taverners. Great to see they're beneficiaries of that as proud partners of ours. But, it completely mitigates what the ECB are trying to do. That's the PR piece of this. And as Ali Mitchell was posting as well, the challenge with a shadow ban is trying to prove that they've intentionally not picked Pakistani players. Yeah. This is the thing. How are they going to be on the hook for this formally? So the ECB have written to the owners now, reportedly yesterday, reminding them of their legal requirements around anti-discrimination legislation to try. But what's to stop the shadow ban? There's pressure so much online. Michael Vaughan, who's got a big megaphone, he's calling it out for what it is. Harry Brook was asked about it before England's most recent game, and he spent like 3 minutes talking about the benefits of Pakistanis in the 100 so far. Moeen Ali last night in a piece in the Telegraph saying that the players will kick off if this happens. This is ultimately a consequence of the ECB knowing this was probably going to happen, running the gauntlet, saying that it wouldn't happen, but at some level, they can't plead ignorance here. This is probably the main thing. Yep. If they come out now and say, we never could have foreseen this happening, isn't this horrible, they're culpable because they must have known. And their conversations. So there are obviously 4 teams that aren't owned by IPL groups. And we saw that Jay Shah was at the T20 World Cup game where India were playing South Africa only a couple of days ago with Sundar Pichai from Google, who is part of the tech Titans who are owning the Spirit. Now, I'm not for a second saying the Spirit will find themselves in this situation, but it's just a reminder that everyone are in the same circles here. It is the same spit circles. It's the same conversations. It's the same challenges wherever the domestic T20 franchise circuit goes.
I think you'll have certainly a couple of the other teams who will do the same thing because they won't want to ruffle feathers with the IPL-backed consortiums. And then you might get a couple of teams who go, well, here's a good, this is a nice opening for us because we can buy Shaheen Shah Afridi cheap because no one else will want to bid on him.
Maybe.
But the thing about it being unprovable is the key, because any team can always say, oh, well, we just decided that none of these players fitted our needs and we wanted somebody else for some other reason and we didn't want to spend that money, or we wanted a different skill set or whatever. Unless you're having like an integrity enforcement style thing where you can intercept messages that say, lol, let's not pick Shaheen Shah Afridi, lol, then that's not going to be able to happen. I suppose the other part of it is that there aren't that many Pakistan players who would be commanding a spot at the moment. I think there were only a couple of Pakistan players in the 100 last season. There, aside from Shaheen Afridi, he's probably the only one where I'm thinking, he's clearly in among the best T20 players in the world, because Babar Azam sort of isn't anymore.
I agree. You could build that case, but it's the quiet part out loud online as well, isn't it? You can see that the narrative building. It's like they've bought the teams, they can do with them whatever they want, but you don't. By buying a product, you don't become immune from the laws of the land when it comes to
discrimination is still illegal. And if you're choosing to not hire someone purely because of national origin, then no, you don't actually get to do that. That's
right. So that's part of why Richard Gould's reportedly written this letter to them, to remind them of their obligations, whether they care or not. That's a whole other thing. And remember, this is happening at exactly the same time as the BBL story continues rattling along. Peter Lawler had an exclusive this week on Cricket et al. About the players now saying, well, okay, then, if you're going to flog the Big Bash, we want a bigger cut of the revenue share. We want 30%, not 27.5%. And the states allegedly aren't sold on this either. I wonder how this story in England will shape that discussion in Australia. Will they want to run the risk when England are out there saying we can't have a sport that's trying to be more inclusive? And there's a whole other piece about private education, which was rattling around yesterday, probably a conversation for another day because I don't want to conflate the two streams. But in Australia, cricket is inclusive. In Australia, there's no ambiguity about the inclusivity of cricket being the national sport from at every part of the community. So how will CA try and protect against discrimination of this type and bans and shadow bans and all the rest of it? How are they going to manage their sell-off when the time comes, which now feels inevitable?
And there are so many UK players, cricketers of Pakistani origin, and quite a lot of Australian cricketers of Pakistani origin as well. So do they start not getting picked up? Do teams also not want to hire Moeen Ali or Adil Rashid or Usman Khawaja or a younger generation of players from that background coming through because they're also deemed to be too Pakistani, even though they don't have a Pakistani passport? That you can't be running the sport in England and also discriminating against one of the bigger minority component populations who contribute to the sport.
And obviously, CA want Indian investment. Otherwise, and this is per Tom Morris's story, which seems bang on, no one's refuted it, that there was CA staff out in India last week trying to lay the foundation for the Big Bash to start next season in Chennai. I mean, come on. Where does it start? Where does it end?
You got to do it. You got to do it. It worked for the AFL in China. The Gold Coast Suns are huge in Guangzhou. Suns merch flying off the shelves. The NRL in Vegas. Nobody can talk about anything else, but... what's the milk going to be doing this year, and go the Broncos, big in Vegas. So it always works taking it offshore. I'm sure they'll sell it out. They'll get a packed house to watch Jimmy Pearson take down. I don't know, the Adelaide Strikers.
And they probably would, but it's kind of not the point, right? It's a line that you and I have said at different points repeatedly. There are lots of ways to make money, but a lot of them come at a cost. And what's the cost? What's the damage? What's the brand damage that CA are willing to absorb if a similar thing plays out there when they sell off the Big Bash? That is the $64,000 question, more like the $64 million question, or even more than that. Again, Jeff, as we navigate our way to our first break, a reminder that our principal partners on The Final Word in season 19, as they were in season 18, are the mighty Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm. We tell their stories week in, week out, on the show, the work they do so often on a no-win, no-fee basis on behalf of hardworking Australians. They've taken us around the world, Jeff. They've been with us everywhere we've gone over the last 12 months or thereabouts. And we're in the middle of running a competition for them. I'm still just pausing on what the prize is on this, and that'll become clear why, hopefully next week. But there's no better time to send in your comeback story, Jeff. You can pick it up from here, but that's what we're doing at the moment, having people send in their stories of great comebacks in line with the work that Maurice Blackburn helps for Australians in the community.
Yes, greatest comeback. Doesn't have to be cricket. Could be something else. Grant Fleming has sent in something else because he says he's a proud dad and his son Joel is at the beginning of a professional swimming career with Carlisle Swim Club in Sydney. This can happen. Dreams can come true. So Grant says that Joel started out in surf lifesaving, loved the ocean, loved the water, was getting involved in school swimming, was never one of the best swimmers going around, but just kept chipping away at it and got picked up by a swimming coach who heard of a couple of good results in the school championships, ended up at the under-15s Australian swimming champs in Adelaide, qualified for the top 10 in the 100 and the 50 freestyle, started getting more serious at 16. Joel was on his way to the 2023 age swimming championships when he got into a disagreement at school and ended up with a broken hand. Very, very Ben Stokes kind of areas here. You've got to make sure that you're careful with swinging your hands around when you need the bones in that. So that threw out his preparation. He couldn't get past the heats in his main events, the 50 and the 100, which really took the wind out of his sails. 2024 competitive season, he started swimming more quickly again, learned a harsh lesson about racing when he touched in fourth in the final of the under-17s 50, and then he went back and really, as they say, tore up the track, trained the house down, was a weapon, was a jet. In the lead up to the age champs in 2024 on the Gold Coast, and then he started getting a shoulder injury a week out. So then it was in his head as to whether he'd be able to perform. He got some physio help from Swimming New South Wales, swam a crucial leg in the relay to help the New South Wales state team win over Queensland, a state of origin where Joel was able to come through. And then he qualified second fastest for the 50 freestyle final. In the final, a win for the little guy, rose to the occasion, touched out the champ, the one who was expected to win, the what's the guy's name who didn't win at the last Olympic, the James Magnuson of the 50-metre free.
2012. I was there for that, losing by 100th of a second. I mentioned last week Graham Parks has taken over New Zealand cricket. The reason I was in there at that final was because he got me in. Anyway, thanks, Parksy.
Well, this is basically what happened. This was Joel here was the non-James Magnuson. He became the under-17
Nathan Adrian
in the 50 free. That's who it was. And he was one of only two public school students selected to represent Australia at the Pan Pacs in Canberra later that year. He's in a rebuild, and they also wanted to mention that Joel is diagnosed with ADHD and is a story showcasing rural and regional talent, as well as being able to overcome those barriers that face kids trying to be successful in sport. And that's always often a hurdle as well, depending which part of the country you come from. So a bunch of comebacks in that story from Grant Fleming about Joel, who is still steaming up and down the pool, and we'll be very excited to see if we hear his name as he goes up through the ranks in open group competition. Thank you, Grant.
Love that. Get that hyper focus on the line in the middle of the pool. Make the most of your neurodivergence, Joel. Great stuff. Right, we'll go to a break. Back in a moment. Heaps of domestic cricket to get into, and we also go back to Pakistan. This is the Final Word, season 19, and we're in episode, 29 of that. We made a lot of eps this season, nearing the end of February. Seabus Super have been with us throughout season 19 as well. Jeff, we've been talking a lot about them on the daily program, and we will do so again right now.
Well, we're talking about Payday Super at the moment because this is coming up. So from the 1st of July this year, Payday Super comes in under Australian law, which means that you have to get paid your superannuation instalments on the same days you get paid salaries and wages, which means that, businesses can't keep back the money and try to hang on to it for a bit longer and try to earn a bit more interest on it and all the kind of cheeky things that various employers sometimes try to do. So Seabus being a sponsor of The Final Word, they have a lot of general information about Payday Super at cbussuper.com.au. So you can go there, find out what's going on, find out what the changes are likely to be, if they will impact you, and what might be the right decision for you to make in terms of superannuation. It's going to be a big change to the super system, one of the more substantial changes in decades. So make sure you're across it. It's February now. The end of the financial year will come up quickly. So head to CBUS and check it out.
Believe me, runs on the board here. When I was working in super over a decade ago, this was a topic of conversation, and the industry funds, which CBUS are front and centre, they've been talking about it. So good on them. cbussuper.com.au, more about them as we work through our daily shows on the World Cup. Jeff, I mentioned we're heading back to Pakistan. Well, sort of heading back to Pakistan. More the work that's been done outside of the country specifically. This broke just after we recorded last week, where 14 former greats, test captains everywhere, have signed a joint letter asking for Imran Khan to be provided with reasonable living conditions in prison. Some of the reports are harrowing. Solitary confinement, no light in the cell, extreme weather conditions in there, a cell which is it 6 meters? I'll get this right. It's 6 feet by 8 feet, tiny cell. And Greg Chappell has been on the front foot here, saying he felt compelled to act. He wrote a most thoughtful piece on Quick Info to accompany the letter, which goes into some more depth here. But, the list that includes Atherton, Border, Brearley, Chappell, Belinda Clark, Sunil Gavaskar, and Kapil Dev from India, interestingly, which is a great thing. David Gower, Kim Hughes, Nasser Hussain, Clive Lloyd, Stephen Waugh, and John Wright. So heavy hitters throughout. Not asking for
no
it to
Pakistani
be free, although,
voices, which is interesting that there's no local support.
Yeah. But you can understand, I don't want to get into the ins and outs of why Imran Khan's in prison. That's not our place, and it would be inappropriate for us to start providing a running commentary from as far away as we are. But on the face of it, him not being able to access blood tests is what his family has said this week for medical conditions. He's lost 85% of sight in one eye. It's just a whole cascading series of issues here around human rights, which naturally a man who's now deep into his 70s, they want to see him treated appropriately. He's serving a sentence of 17 years and a concurrent sentence of 13 years. So in all probability, if he weren't to be released, that'll be the rest of his life in prison. But I guess that's a different topic. But the humane treatment of prisoners isn't something that should be brushed under the carpet.
Yes, and it's always been a huge story, and should be. It's been a story that's often ignored. Is how many millions and millions of prisoners in carceral systems are treated horribly. The attention comes onto it when it's somebody notable, somebody famous. But that doesn't mean that it's not the wrong thing, and it doesn't mean that he shouldn't be being treated with some degree of dignity and respect. Which it is possible. It is possible to do that even within a carceral system. So it is a horrible story. There's obviously so much politics to why he was locked up and being deposed by the military because he was trying to take them on. Who is actually corrupt and who isn't corrupt in Pakistan politics is an almost inextricable web, but it's an awful thing the way he's being treated, just as it's an awful thing the way millions of other prisoners are being treated in Pakistan and elsewhere.
Yeah, I'd recommend reading Osman Samiuddin on this as well, which gave wider context to the way in which, shall we say diplomatically, the way that lives of former leaders in Pakistan have taken a familiar route. And so it proves here for Imran Khan. So, what they're asking for here is immediate, adequate and ongoing medical attention from qualified specialists addressing the reported health issues, humane and dignified conditions of detention in line with international standards, including regular visits by close family, fair and transparent access to legal process without undue delay or hindrance. So they're not saying free Imran Khan, although I can understand why that campaign would be running side by side with it. It's more about, what's going on here to him behind bars in Pakistan right now. Jeff, in Pakistan as well, a bit of a handbrake turn here, but we'll do the best we can. The PSL is starting at the same time as the IPL this year at the end of the T20 World Cup. Some interesting goings on here from an Australian perspective. So we knew Steve Smith has signed, Marnus Labuschagne signed, Glenn Maxwell signed. I didn't sort of see that coming after he had decided not to play in the IPL. I suppose the PSL's much shorter, So he's not going
Shorter,
to be away from his family
less
for
intense.
4 months, less intense. But yeah, that's where they will be. I'm also pondering what that might mean for some of the players who go to the PSL. I mean, we're talking shadow bans. I mean, what does it constitute if you're now willing to play in Pakistan in a domestic tournament up against the IPL? I don't know, by the way. I'm just speculating. But this, over time, not really an issue for the aforementioned 3 Aussies who aren't part of the IPL anymore. But there'll be other younger players who have to make decisions as to whether they follow their short-term interest and try and make money on the circuit in a well-established competition, if it means it might risk them being picked up in, I don't know, South Africa or maybe the Big Bash one day or the 100, you know what I mean? Like there'll be the link back to the story we were discussing earlier is clear.
Yeah, I'm sure it will start to be that way. Over time, it will develop more into that. That if you're a PSL player at any point, then you've made your bed. You've made your choice, and you'll be shut out of the rest of it, unless you're really, really, really good. There are always exceptions for athletes who kick on and become world beaters. Then they will get picked up one way or another. But yeah, if you're a mid-tier sort of player who might jag a contract at the back end of an IPL list, then it just becomes a reason to not pick you when they're doing the pros and cons list and you've got 3 or 4 different players who are all relatively similar and you're deciding, it's like when you're doing job applications, you're often finding a reason to not select someone, which can be a bit trivial because you have to find a tiebreaker. And if that tiebreaker is, well, this guy's played 4 PSL seasons and this one hasn't, then yeah, I strongly suspect that the shadow ban will start to apply to non-Pakistani players as well.
And the one Maxi's playing for is I've forgotten what they're called now, the one that's got Houston randomly dropped.
The Kingsman. The Kingsman, yeah. He's going to have the umbrella with the sword in it, or the machine gun in it, or whatever it is. He's going to have a secret base in a classy tailor's shop in Savile Row. The Houston, Hyderabad, Houston, Kingsman via Chicago. Here we go.
Yeah,
go Kingsman.
Hakeem Olajuwon and Glenn Maxwell united together in sport. I just hope that he has a nice time. I feel the same way at this stage of his career. I just want him to have a nice time. Whatever happens over there, enjoy it. I'm sure, Jeff, you enjoyed the ICC press release that came out yesterday informing us that Doha are hosting their next round of meetings, and a press release that goes to great lengths to justify why Doha would be the host of their next round of meetings. I wonder why.
More like don't ha. Since 2020, overall participation in cricket in Qatar has grown by an impressive 447%. This is a bit like the US Department of Homeland Services saying assaults on ICE agents have increased by 1,000%. You're like, oh, that's a really interesting number. Where'd you get that number from? Interesting, really interesting. 447%, driven largely by initiatives aimed at introducing the sport to new and younger audiences. So basically, they've done the Woolworths Blast in Qatar, the Qatar version of the Woolies. Here's an apple, hit a ball with a plastic bat. And then they're claiming that means that they have like tens of thousands of cricketers now in Qatar because it's been introduced to schools with that Creo competition they play that's kind of modified rules cricket for kids and whatnot.
They just want to make sure that over time Qatar becomes part of the financial story, right? It's very obvious what's going on here. They just want to they want to tap into they want to see the money in every
Gulf
way
states.
they can.
Gulf states have money, Adam. Gulf states have money. They want cricket in Saudi Arabia, cricket in Qatar, cricket in the UAE, all of the petrostate sports washing capitals need to have more to do with cricket, not less, apparently.
Can't see them hosting the next ICC meeting in Switzerland because their participation is great. It's very obvious why these things are happening. So all that justification around why, when we all know the real reason, don't put out a press release and there's a piss down one's back and tell one it's raining that comes to mind there.
It provides a valuable opportunity, Adam, to further strengthen the collaboration between the ICC, the Qatar Cricket Association, and key national sporting stakeholders.
Cash.
There you go.
Jeff, back to the cricket, the on-field stuff. Australia's women have played their first one-day international this evening at AB Field against India.
Now, easy.
I was going to say, given you did that game, why don't you tell us about that? Then we'll loop around to the other two T20s that were played last week.
Yeah, well, the context of this game was that India won the T20 series 2-1, and the Australians were pretty steamed. They don't like losing stuff after, they got beaten in the first one, then they won the second T20, and they were kind of going, okay, we're back on track here, and then they lost the decider, as it were. It's a multi-format series, so now they've tied things up on points because they won that ODI comfortably. Quite interesting that, so Alyssa Healy's come back for the one days and the tests, which means she's captaining again. So Molyneux was captaining the T20s and will take over in the other formats, but not yet. So Healy's still there, but still as captain in this one-day series. Megan Shute had to come in from outside the squad too because they had an injury to Kim Garth. And so Elise Perry got injured. Georgia Vole replaced her. But Garth and Perry, they've both done quads, which means the test match is pretty soon. Like, strong chance that Perry misses the test, which is huge. There's so few opportunities to play test cricket, and she is by an absolute country mile Australia's most accomplished women's test cricketer probably ever, you could say by now. Hasn't played as many as some of the early days, a few of the early days players, but has played a lot. So I don't know. I hope there's some miracle. I hope she's able to get back, but it looks unlikely that that'll happen. Anyway, this Australian team with the changes held India to 214. Ash Gardner 3 wickets. I'm just keeping an eye on the Sophie Molyneux stuff. I find it interesting. Got pasted in the T20s. Went at a very expensive economy rate. Cheap tonight, 1 for 17 off 5, but only bowled the 5 overs. So just. And batting at 8, this question I've got as to, is she actually in the best 11 all the time? Just keeping an eye on that. Healy made 50. Beth Mooney did the firefighting again, made 76, I'm going to say. And, they lost a couple of wickets. They lost 2 and 2 balls and had a little wobble, but it was just Mooney and Healy and then Sutherland dousing the fire, as usually happens. I'll tell you an interesting bit, though, Adam. Hannah Darlington was in the commentary box. Yep. She's only 24, and she's had so many injury problems the last couple of years, and has played for Australia and kind of fell out of favour. Then all the injuries. She was bloody good on the mic as a 24-year-old. She sounded so. And she's always been a super impressive woman, but in the way that she comes across, the way that she speaks. But she was very, very good. There was no sense of this is a nervous young player having a go on the TV. Like, she was terrific. So great. One to note, one for the future.
One to watch. And T20s that I reflected on before, just briefly, Australia won by 19 runs at Monaco. That was the Georgia Vole game. She made 88 from 57 out of 163 for 5. India fell 17 short of that, 144 for 9. Interesting that Harmanpreet, whose strike rate come under scrutiny here, she got 36 from 30. But that was the game where she became the most capped women's cricketer ever in international cricket. That was her 356th game, I think it was, something like that. Then Elise Perry played her 350th in the next game. So those two are the standard bearer on that front, given how long they've been playing for. Harman has played since 2009, and now she's 36. So similar to Perry in that they started a long, long time ago when women's cricket looked so different. Yeah, Perry, she might have made it, 07, 08 around that time. So the two of them, the old war horses. Ash Gardner took 3 for to seal the deal for Australia in the second game, but India won the series, and the third game by 17 runs at Adelaide Oval. They made 176 for 6. Smriti Mandana, 82 from 55, so playing the role that Vole did in the previous game. Australia, 159 for 9, with Gardner getting 57, but not enough. So the first time Australia had lost a bilateral series in Australia against India for a decade. So that's not nothing. And there are 2 more one-dayers. They're at Hobart, aren't they?
Somewhere.
And then from there, I think they're both at Hobart. And then we move on to the WACA ground in Perth, the WACA ground, where I hope Dennis Kennedy will commentate now, between the 6th and the 9th of March, which we will have daily episodes for on the final word in the usual way. And Jeff,
you would have been losing your mind if you'd been at the ASC last night, because Bruce McAvaney won a gong. He won the best broadcast by an individual, I think, partly because he managed to get Kerry Stokes to let him go and do the athletics on SBS. So they had the. I
was wondering that because he called athletics on SBS last year. Because when the nominations came out in December or November or whatever it was, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Because I'm not living in Oz, I wasn't aware that McAvaney was back on the tools actually commentating. Because I know he does some hosting in various
step
sports on
back
Channel 7,
with,
but doesn't do the commentary piece anymore. Like he hosts the Women's World Cup football a couple of years ago. I'm sure there are other things he's also doing. But yeah, SBS was the main part of the nom because he's back actually calling, which was his first passion. So that's a nice thing.
Yeah. And won the prize for it, which, I mean, he got the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2008, I reckon. So pretty remarkable to be nearly 20 years to be back there winning the gong. That I don't imagine he would have been putting himself forward for it in any of the previous, 10 years or so. He hasn't been in the categories. So, yeah, nice to see him returning to what he did well. The Sheffield Shield, Adam, it was big. A lot happened in the Shield. Let's start with the Vics. They will host the final, even though they've got a couple of games to play. It is in the bag for them. Huge result in the West. Sam Harper at the top, the latest player you've been getting very excited about, had a huge big bash as well. They've been toying with this thing of having him open. They've had him open a couple of times, and they had him bat 3 at one point. In those sort of situations where the pitches are tricky, then the Vics sort of decided, well, maybe we'll get more out of him if he just goes aggressive at the top. And it worked here. Made 100 off 79 balls opening the batting, ended up with 119 off 109. Century opening stand with Campbell Kellaway. And then Will Sutherland made an unbeaten 100 down the order at number 8, supported by Scotty Boland, who faced 21 balls at number 11 and made sure that he got to the ton. So all things being very happy and cheerful for the Vics there. 431 for 9 declared, and then Boland takes the pads off, grabs the ball, gets Cameron Bancroft out, gets Sam Whiteman out, so 2 of the key players for that WA side. And then Sam Elliott, who, as you say, can't stop taking wickets, takes 5 for 75, bowls out WA for 238. So a couple of hundred runs difference. And then they just racked up Victoria 274 for 4 batting second. Harper 141, twin centuries. Ollie Peake retired hurt. The Fergberger made 47 not out, batting at number 7. They set WA 468 to win. And then Scotty Boland, 6 for 22. He's taken 6 for 22 at the Wacker. And that included taking out the entire top 6. I love it when a scorecard's neat, but they weren't all in order because Joel Curtis at 6 ended up being last man out, trying to hold things together, and Boland took the final wicket to seal the victory. But when you read the card, Boland, that's the top 6. My word, he actually is better. Like he's better than he was 5 years ago. He's better than he was 4 years ago. He's probably better than he was 3 years ago. Like
when you're in the national system, nationally contracted, when everything is designed around playing Test cricket, it does change the fortunes of a bowler. It's why once you're in that world, like Xavier Bartlett's a good example of that right now, right? People are like, oh, Xavier Bartlett leading that attack at the World Cup. That's an investment. That's about now, but that's an investment. They want Xavier Bartlett playing Test cricket soon. Why wouldn't you? Because of the movement he gets away from the right-hander. So, I'm sure that his time will come, but not while Scotty Boland is floating about at the peak of his powers. Just on Sam Harper, this is one of those quirky ones in cricket where he's done virtually nothing in his first-class career, which has been predominantly played at 7 to warrant conversation around being an international player. But the 100 on Boxing Day, 84 not out in another close chase for the Stars, twin hundreds here. Yep, there have been a slew of low scores as well. That's the lot in life of a cricketer. But if you were picking a team based purely on who is in form right now, he'd be in the chat despite averaging mid-20s. And this is where, cricket teams, sometimes you're not selecting them purely based on what's happened before. You're picking them on the here and now. It's where
what might happen
averages and career averages can be deceptive. It's where, the past can not be a reflection on the future. It's where selectors shouldn't exclusively use numbers and spreadsheets, and it's sometimes the frustration.
Well, certainly not career. Career averages tell you about how many runs someone made 10 years ago. Not how many runs.
Well, remember that many years ago there was a conversation around Michael Klinger and saying, well, his batting averages, and I'm like, he made his first class debut in 1999.
Yeah.
Before Brendan Vavola kicked 12 on New Year's Eve.
His average was 0.3 or something behind Khawaja or Joe Burns or whoever it was at the time. Yeah. And on that basis, it was, his batting average isn't as good. So
it's not nothing. It's not nothing. And, I take, for example, Darren Lehman recently has been very upset on social media about Saif Zaib being overlooked for all of the England Lions squads. And fair enough, he was overlooked for a team of the year as well, I'm pretty sure. He made 600s last year and averaged 75. So averages aren't nothing, but they're not everything. So I'm not saying Sam Harper's getting vaulted into the South African touring party, but if you were starting with a blank piece of paper, he might end up in a squad. just purely based on being a man with a hot hand at the right time of the year, and it got Victoria into the final.
I'll tell you who else is red hot, Adam. Bo Webster. Is he big?
Ever not?
They say he's big.
Is he ever not in form? Is he really? Yeah. Apart from 2 games earlier this year when he was operating with one leg and he was injured, has Bo Webster been out of form in the last 3 years? So like every time he plays, he makes a contribution with bat or ball or both. And so it proved. You can tell the story. But I just thought during the week, like, how unlucky that bloke was to miss 4 of the 5 Ashes Test matches through the summer.
He was unlucky. It was structural rather than anything based on what he was doing. But they were in a lot of trouble, Tassie. New South Wales coming down to visit in Hobart, bowled them out for 136. Liam Hatcher, 5 for 51. New South Wales then made 356 with no tons. Got to love a scorecard like that. Cruel Intentions, Ryan Philippi made 81 not out. That was the highest score. Those Sam Constas watches, he made 27. Curtis Patterson watches, he made 33. And then Tassie bulked up second time around. They went, okay, well, we're going to have to make a shitload of runs and bat forever. And they did. Jake's Ashes, Jake Weatherald made 95. Didn't quite get the ton, but his first score of note since the 70, whatever it was, in Brisbane. Charlie Wakeem, 57. And then Bo Webster, 108, not out from 260 balls. Batted long, batted deep, took it deep, and took them to 454 in the third innings, which meant that they were 235 in front. They could declare late in the piece and have a crack. They bowled 37 overs. They did take 5 wickets, so if they'd had another 20 overs, who knows? But that would have been too squeaky for a declaration. So they had a go. Riley Meredith took 4 for 40. New South Wales 5 for 128 in the end, and it was a draw.
Yeah, so Tasmania, there is definitely a route to the final for them. So, I mean, you got one more game to recap, just to give context. Those 5 wickets, you could argue they could have lived a little bit more there, I think, because they're 5 points out of the second spot right now. I know they've got 2 games to go and they'll back themselves to win them and get there conventionally, but they might rue not dangling more of a carrot. I know it was bloody hard because they weren't far enough ahead to. But it's the balance in
having saved the game from a very likely loss, like to then put it all back on the line again at the end is, I can understand why they didn't do that. Had they, they would have been setting something like 170 in 50 overs, 55 overs. It would have been gettable. It would have been a massive punt. But you're right. In fact, now I say it out loud, getting the draw was more important. But still, 5 wickets away from full points. They're in fourth. In third, South Australia on 33 and a bit, Queensland 34 and a bit in second, and the Vicks up at 51 and well ahead. And that third game, Jeff, was where South Australia won in Brisbane, which would have been huge for Queensland, but they've missed the chance to consolidate where they were. Yeah. Well, look, the opportunity was there, but South Australia in Brisbane, South Australia in Brisbane, So the away team's doing well here, and it was a shootout, really. So Queensland all out 185. Liam Scott takes 5 for 33. South Australia made 214, so a modest lead. Jake Lehman at 7, making 74, and then they did Queensland second time around for 119. Nathan McCann drew 5 for 32, including a run of wickets towards the end. South Australia needed 91, got them 3 down. So, it leaves Victoria well clear on the top at 50 and a bit points. Queensland second on 34, South Australia third on 33, Tassie on 28, New South Wales on 27.
Still in it.
So a scrum down there, and Western Australia on 17.
So they're still in it, New South Wales. This round's huge because Queensland host WA and WA are on the bottom. So they've just got to win that game at AB Field. The round isn't until the 5th of March. They've got some one-day cricket between times. Or the final. Oh, no, they don't actually because of we'll come back to that in a minute. The one-day finals after this round owing to they've got a gap entirely. Tassie hosting Victoria. Tassie will need to beat Victoria at home. And South Australia, New South Wales, whoever wins that game will stay alive for the 10th and final round, which is played the week after. The reason I was stumbling over my words there about the Dean Jones Cup, a reminder, the final of that was meant to be this week before the next Shield round, but they had to amend it because of the women's games down at Hobart, which got moved there because the lights aren't ready at the junction. Anyway, so the final round of group games in the Dean Jones Cup was played after the Shield round, old school, straight after the Shield round. Teams stay where they are. Well, they not quite where they were, but you know what I'm trying to say. They stayed They changed formats and went again. New South Wales are into the final against Tasmania, but had to beat Tasmania to get there. So Tassie 274. Ryan Hadley got a fifer for New South Wales. They chased it in 31 overs, 274 in 31. Now, that was necessary to make sure they got the bonus point, 5 available points, 4 for the win, 1 for the bonus, to safeguard against Queensland getting their bonus point. How did they do that? Curtis Patterson, 125 not out from 89, Jeff. Yes. Curtis Patterson, another domestic 100 this year. He's 6, I think it is, through the season across the format, so he stays there and thereabouts. But New South Wales had to do that because what happened in Queensland's game, Queensland got only 260 minus 126. So that interesting that he he's going to end the season the way that he started it, making hundreds in list day cricket for Queensland. But then they bowled out South Australia for 135 to get their own bonus point to keep them. So that meant, had New South Wales not got theirs, they would have finished even on 28 points. Instead, New South Wales keep their beak in front of them. In all of that, bowling out the South Australian team for 135, Mitch Swepson, 7 for 28 for the veteran leggy, I could call him now. That is I had a look. It's the 68th best first list day figures ever. The best ever for Queensland. Well, I probably should have started with that. And the third best in the history of the Mercantile Mutual Cup. By my scan,
cracking the top 70
might be faulty.
Every kid grows up. Every kid grows up thinking, I want to crack the top 70 best list day bowling figures ever. One day that will be my prize.
It was super rare. 6-fers in one-day cricket were virtually unheard of until 20 years ago. Anyway, a 7-for-4, a man we've loved the work of for many years in Mitch Swepson. And then from the Gabba to the Wacker, where WA got a consolation win after losing their Shield game. They won by 8 wickets over the Vicks. But Campbell Kellaway, out of 230, got 105 after getting a couple of starts in the Shield game, which feels important for him if he wants to get himself on that plane to South Africa, maybe as the spare bat. WA chased it 2 down with Joel Curtis getting 91. So the Vicks top of the table in one format, bottom of the table in the other. Tasmania to play New South Wales for the Dean Jones Cup, and that final, I think, is on the 11th of March.
Yep. It's a topsy-turvy world in domestic cricket. And it's a topsy-turvy world on The Final Word, because that's it. That's our show. That is the news, the views, the reviews, the avenues for this week. Adam, why are you waving socks at me?
Oh, I'm just going to say, I'm off to Malta. I'm just going to say, watch this space. These are the Big Boots UK bamboo socks. We're talking about bamboo underwear, underpants at the moment. If you're a cricketer out there, I'm going to wear these in Malta this week to play. Watch this space. Final Word. Bamboo socks, Big Boots UK. Just a teaser for you there to the end of the show. And I look forward to wearing these on the fields of Malta. Get the off breaks going and see if we can, take a sack of wickets.
Would you say, if that is a teaser about your upcoming trip, is that a Malteser?
It's a Maltese cross. There you go.
Which is not a dog. Don't get confused. Don't get it twisted.
No,
ain't a dog.
Definitely not. It ain't a dog. Yep. Can't wait to get over there. I think that's us done though, Jeff. It's been a jam-packed show. A reminder that if you become a patron, that's the best way to support what we do on the show. We've never been giving more away to our patrons. And if you send in to info@finalwordcricket.com your comeback story, that's another giveaway and a great prize coming there too, which I'll announce next week. But there are different ways to make sure that we can hopefully keep giving back to the people who've given plenty to us. Info@finalwordcricket.com to enter the comeback story, become a patron or up your pledge to go into the running for the Stomping Ground beer on the weekend, or the 7 pairs of Step 1 pants. Step 1, get some on the weekly show for the next 6 weeks. There you go. That's me done.
7 seconds away. And that is us done as well. Patreon.com/thefinalword. Jeff Lemon, Adam Collins. We are out of here. See you next time.
Bye.